The past few years, I feel like, is defining my relationship with God. 6 years ago, I had a miscarriage, and it didn't quite hit me until probably about a month and a half later. I don't know if I was in denial or, I figured I was only pregnant for a blip, and so, but just really being gripped with the fact that no matter what, it was life, and losing that baby, it hit me like a ton of bricks and was not good for the marriage. At the time, we had 4 children, and that was it. We were done with 4. That's all I ever wanted. So, for my husband, it was a big shock anyway, and so he couldn't sympathize with me, and it just caused so much friction, and I just wanted him to love me through it all, and I just started hearing lies from the enemy that if he couldn't love me now, how could he possibly ever love me through this? And it was enough for me to start packing my bag. I grabbed the biggest suitcase I could, started filling it up, and God said, "Stop, you're not going anywhere." And I obviously was not very happy with him. I'm sure I argued a little bit. And he said, "You are going to forgive your husband like I have forgiven you millions of times, and you are going to love him like I love him." Those were the words that just started to transform my life in a way that it wasn't just about loving my husband the way that he loves him, but it was about loving everyone that I encountered, and seeing people in, through his eyes. Fast forward another year, and I was pretty much on my deathbed with Lyme disease. And the Lyme had affected me neurologically, my lymphatic system, everything. And of course, Satan just plowed through and took that opportunity to really just start feeding me lies of who I was or who I wasn't. And it was just this horrible war going on inside me, and I had decided that it was enough, and everyone else would be better off without me. And so I, barefoot in the winter, no jacket, and I just ran. I ran out my door, and I ran down my driveway, and my goal was to get hit by a car. Hadn't really thought it out. I just knew I needed it to stop. All the pain, everything that I was hearing, the physical pain, the mental pain, believing so many lies, believing that my husband didn't love me. It was just this awful war, just this battle going on. And as I was approaching the end of my driveway, audibly heard the Lord say, "You're not going to die, and you're going to be worse than you are now." In the midst of that, we conceived our 5th child, Oliver Cypress, and it means peaceful blessing. The Lord used Oliver as this way to kind of anchor me down that this is what I'm doing right now, of this refocus. I just needed to grow this baby. At my 20-week checkup, I also had gone to the doctor that I was seeing, and he said, "You are free and clear of Lyme disease." And when I was on the detox, he told me, he said, "I think we've gotten enough out of your system that you're going to see this baby's face." And I hung on to those words that I was going to see. And I have a very rambunctious, crazy, redheaded fireball. So, just hearing that, the Lord spoke through him of just saying, "Trust me, you're going to see his face." So my life just kind of started to okay, and I was healthy, and I was, getting better, and marriage started kind of getting funky again. It got to the point where I was fighting so hard, I was losing my focus on the Lord, that I was focusing on just fixing the marriage and not focusing on fixing me. And so the Lord really just kind of got a hold of me with that, and my heart just shifted for who I was. And I got to a point where I started to realize my worth and my value. And he used that time for me to start hearing his whispers of the way that he sees me, the way that he values who I am. Hurricane Michael had hit, so fast forward to 2018. Hurricane Michael hit, and my husband was called to go to help in Mexico Beach with his work. And I just knew I knew that something big was going to happen. And when my husband came back from Mexico Beach, he was a changed man. God had just gotten completely a hold of him. I could see it in his eyes. He just looked different, just radiant. And the love of the Lord was just all over him. And he hadn't been walking with the Lord like we're supposed to. And when he came home, as much as this beautiful new man was standing in front of me, along with it came everything else, the confessions, he thought I made up my miscarriage. Just amazing that when Satan has a hold of you, how he can just feed you these lies. And, a woman that he knew he loved was seeing her as a liar. And he thought I was faking the whole Lyme disease. These signature moments in my life that the Lord used to get a hold of me, to show me who he was, Satan was using it to show him who I wasn't, and to blind him of Jesus in me and coming, and so he was just not able to see all that. So when he came back from Mexico Beach, he saw Jesus. He saw who I had been towards him for all those years. And it was a process. There was a lot. It was 17 years of 19 years. We had known each other for 19 years. So 19 years of him just telling me everything, literally as if just this open book. Read every page you want, it doesn't matter, because he knew that nothing mattered anymore because God loved him. God had forgiven him of everything. And he said that God knocked him completely on his butt while he was in Mexico Beach. So it was an accurate description. With that came him being so dramatically changed that things started shifting in his workplace. And it was a mutual decision, but he no longer worked for that company. So he was out of a job for 4 months. During that time, it was this restoration that the Lord was giving over my marriage. And that year, he had said to me that was my word for the year, was restore. And I was seeing him restore everything. And there was nothing inside me. It was 100%. I saw it as the forgiveness that came from God himself and transcended through Jesus Christ onto all of us. It was that type of forgiveness. It was this forgiveness that he had been preparing me for 5 years. Those little actions through marriage that people just fight over. To forgive to the depths, no matter what the flesh might want to say. There was no flesh left. And he was on the ground, just a puddle, just this broken man poured out, everything exposed. And I reached down and I grabbed his hand. And I said, I forgive you. I knew, but it was no strength of mine. There was nothing of Tina. There was nothing left of me, that it was 100% the Savior through me that was reaching out, grabbing Kyle's hand and saying, I forgive you for everything. The 4 months that he wasn't working was an amazing gift because we got to live a lifetime with him. We got to experience all these things. We went across America for 19 days and we went to Mexico Beach, brought back to the place where God got a hold of him. I wanted to see it. I wanted to be there. And I had written in the sand, faith, on the shoreline. And I took a picture of it. And it was just that the Lord speaking to me, that even when the waters come, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there for you through it all. And I could see his hands. He was trying hard to get a job. The struggle with that, of not being able to provide for the family, was starting to get to him. He just kept on giving it to the Lord. But in last May, it was last April, he just started hearing all sorts of lies of the enemy, that everything that he had done in his past were the consequences of him in this moment, that we were being forced to sell our home. We were going to have to take the children out of all of their activities. Just wanting to be in this place that he had wanted to provide and protect, and seeing this new vision of what it looked like to be a father and a husband was kind of being shaken. And he was really struggling with hearing who his self-worth was. And it got to the point that I started battling for my husband again, and those lies became too loud. And on May 1st, my husband took his life. The next day, the Lord spoke to me and said, I allowed this to happen. This was Kyle's boundary. This was his day anyway, whether it be a car accident or a heart attack or just died in his sleep. This was my day that I had for him regardless. And I allowed it to happen this way because I'm going to use his story. I'm going to use your story to reach people and for it to impact the community. I just knew that I was going to be able to trust God's hand on mine and my children's lives, whatever that looked like financially, being in our home. And I began to speak things of, I don't know how this is going to happen, but this is the way it's going to be. And just knowing that the Lord was leading me to say these things and speaking in faith of knowing that he had us. I mean, all of Isaiah, I feel like the Lord was already driving in me Isaiah. This is like the day before he was gone. I was copying these scripture verses in Bible Lens onto pictures that we had taken across the United States and Zion, and that all of these things, of these promises, that what he is for us, promise after promise after promise, knowing that he will take care of us. And I think some people might even say, how on earth could I think that God's hand and provision has been on my life after all of these things, losing a child, being on my deathbed, going through this loss of losing my husband? That question, how is that God's hand on her life? He doesn't promise us it's going to be easy, but he promises that the burden will be light. He will carry it for us. It's not been easy. It's been a very, very hard walk. But what's been easy, I feel like I've had it easier than other people who might be walking through this. Shocked that I could even say that. But when I really stopped and reflected on it, it was because God has carried me. And with that, he has just brought in this community, massive community. The hands and feet of Jesus are more stunning than I ever thought. But the biggest thing that he keeps showing me is that I am nothing. I have nothing. There's no tools that Tina has equipped herself with, but that it's all because of his strength. It's all because of the joy that he's given me in the midst of the greatest sorrow I've ever walked through. Because every promise that he speaks in his word is being kept in my life. He promised that we would become to full emotional restoration, and I'm seeing that. I'm seeing that take place in my life. I dealt with all sorts of anxiety and depression and all sorts of things over the course of my entire life. And the more that I've pressed into him, the more these wounds have just shut, just like slam shut. I mean, I got that vision of that, of just literally these wounds, these things that were anchors on my life. That's not what he calls for his children. And everything that he has spoken, I'm just seeing that just come true. So he's faithful and true.